I was in Poland, however, I managed to get some press attention on one part of this solution, and though it was so simple, the newspapers in Krakow called me a genius. All I said was, I understand that there are two sides fighting right now in Poland. On the one hand, you have the labor groups who are employed in the coal sector and depend on coal mining and processing to survive economically. And on the other hand, you have the tech groups and service economy and academics and scientists and public health officials and doctors who are pushing for renewables and who want to keep the coal in the ground. Not just because of the climate effects, but because of the lung disease and the smog that coal creates. Now, these two groups are fighting each other tooth and nail. And we're also learning that the goal of clean coal is elusive because it takes 2 units of coal energy in to get 1 unit of clean coal energy out. Cleaning coal is energy intensive. Sequestering the carbon molecules, both the toxic compounds and soot and smog and CO2, takes energy and costs money. But I would like to respectfully submit that you could invest now in solar and wind and other renewables using the money you would save on health costs and lost work days and cleanup of soot-damaged surfaces, etc., and then use the clean power they generate to clean up the coal operation. So you would use 2 units of renewable energy in to get 1 unit of clean coal energy out. Doesn't that sound like a win-win? You could easily clean up your dirty brown coal that way for domestic use, using the clean coal to jumpstart a methanol economy, and take your already cleaner anthracite coal and continue to export it for hard currency, but power the domestic sector with solar hot water and photovoltaics and geothermal and wind and heat pumps and dimethyl ether and thermal depolymerization and biogas, etc., so that the cities would be spotlessly clean with fresh, healthy air to breathe. How does that sound? And I guess it sounded good enough, or I was a good enough politician in the way I sold the idea, that the newspaper called me this climate professor genius from USF. Very flattering. But at the end of the day, it just goes back to common sense nexus thinking and a rejection of the binary either-or logic, an embrace of the postmodern both and. It's a philosophy born of faith. It comes from a belief that we have more solutions than problems and that we can always find a way to see good triumph over bad. You see, the politics of the North are a confused set of politics that emerged from a clash of many cultures, a clash of many ideologies that all came together in what emerged as centers of commerce and power. At its best, the Enlightenment experiments that we forged from the Magna Carta and the Iroquois Confederacy among others, and the Declaration of Independence and the American Constitution, created a politics of inclusion and democracy, an e pluribus unum, where a diversity of ideas were freely debated until the best emerged. Win-win was the ethos, and a faith in some kind of good, loving, supportive, natural, or spiritual force permeated the politics. At its worst, the North produced fascism, a politics of competitive exclusion and oligarchy, of social Darwinism, where only the fittest, those most ready to adapt because of inherited wealth and privilege, prevail, and where we suffer the rule of the few over the many. The pluralistic moments in our politics saw us striving to learn from everyone and striving to make sure that everyone had a chance to learn. The totalitarianism moments have seen us dictating to people what to do and how to do it, and totalitarians seek total control over resources, over food and energy and water. As Lord Acton famously said, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But what if we used energetic power as our metaphor and applied it to political power? What would happen if we switched to clean energy, to clean power? Could we then say clean power tends to improve and absolutely clean power improves absolutely? Could the end of dirty power help end dirty politics? Given the amount of power and filth fossil fuels have generated ecologically and politically, the chances seem pretty good. Centralized power, power that can be controlled by the few because of its concentrated form, and easy to store and easy to control fossil liquids, solids, and highly compressed gases, tends to concentrate political power. Decentralized electrical or transportation or industrial or domestic power also tends to decentralize political control. It lends itself much better to the maintenance of a democracy. One of the issues that climate politics needs to tackle is the difference between a democracy and a republic and what that means for climate policy. And at the same time, what decentralized renewable energy sources mean not just for climate mitigation and pollution abatement, but for decentralizing governance. The United States, we must remember, is not an Athenian democracy where every citizen gets an equal vote. De Tocqueville and many of our founding fathers were against any democratic process that could lead to the tyranny of the majority or mob rule. Instead, we created a republic that is a representative democracy in the hopes that experienced, well-educated people would represent their competing constituencies to hammer out policies that worked for the vast majority of us, that worked for the greater good, not just the winning side. Politics was supposed to use Hegelian dialectics and Socratic dialogue to work out the best compromises, which would always be subject to further revision and refinement. And remember that revision really means to keep exploring options with improved vision. You will find when you explore Drawdown that many of the climate solutions in the book really are political solutions based on giving more voice and agency to others who had been left out of the concentrated, centralized inner circle.